is a fairly big snakehead. So first I am going to do the really best cut on the whole fish, which are the cheeks. With any fish that's of any size, don't waste your cheek meat. It is the finest. It's the sweetest, the whitest, the firmest. It's just a little nugget, but boy, is it good. So many people don't do this on a fish of any size, like this one or this one. I'm gonna get that beautiful medallion of cheek meat. So that's just a little bonus. Okay, then I'm gonna make the initial cut you make with all fish of this species. It's a slant cut towards the head. There's bones right here, there's meat back here. I want to come up right against the bone to maximize my yield. Notice the angle of knife. I'm pointing towards the sky with this tip. That way, instead of entering the gut cavity, I hit this backbone, which stops the cut. That tells me the cut's over. I hit that before I go to the gut cavity. So I've done a tail cut like this. I've done this cut. Now notice I'm about 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch above the dorsal fin. I want to hug that. That tells me where my backbone is. I'm using my left hand only to hold down the fish. I go all the way down to the cut I made near the tail. There. Initial cut number 1 for that side. Again, you don't want to cut yourself by handling the gills or inside the gill rakers. Now I'm going to do cut number 2. Again, I want to subtract out this beautiful cheek meat that my cat just ate. Okay, well, I love cats. They eat a lot of mice, but they also just stole some meat. So from now on, I'll put the meat top side. Okay, so here's my cheek meat. I'm distracted now. Okay, anyway, here's my beautiful cheek medallion. Put it right there. For the purposes of this filming, we're working in the sun. We would typically not work in the sun. We would typically work in the shade and earlier in the day, so there'd be no flies. Okay, tail cut, doesn't matter which order you do it in, as long as these 2 cuts are made. Now notice it's pretty symmetrical. 2 slant cuts that way. Okay, so now again, I'm about 1/8 of an inch above the backbone. Brushing down my dorsal when it's in the way. Notice the angle of cut. I don't want to do this. If I do that, I'm going to penetrate that backbone and it's going to mess up my fillet on the other side. I'm kind of parallel to the backbone. Using my left thumb to lift the fillet slightly. Again, there's a lot of different ways to fillet a fish. You can't do this with this species. Okay, now my initial cuts are done on both sides. Now I'll flip the fish so you can see. So I've isolated the backbone. Backbone's right here, and on either side there are my initial cuts. This now guides my fillet. So now I come in, I'll angle it a little bit for you. Notice I wasted a little bit of meat there. Now I'm going to hug that backbone. I want to maximize yield. So now I'm following this backbone. My knife is talking to me this whole time. It's telling me, Brett, you're in contact with the bone. That's good. I don't want to cut through the bone, I want to be in contact. Snakehead have an elongated gut cavity for its innards. That means that you're going to have to arc upwards to go around that gut cavity like this. This is the biggest challenge I had when I first started filleting these. In rockfish, striped bass, tuna, most species, your gut cavity is only up here. Snakehead goes all the way down to there. So now I get down low on the table. Now I arc back down because it's a curving gut cavity. So it's going, now I'm arcing back down towards the ventral fins. That's a good cut. Good. I'm using a stiff knife here, just because for this species, this knife has proved to be better. Eventually I'll use this flexible knife. You can certainly use any good fillet knife. Okay, now I am willing to cut through bone near the head section, because there's a lot of meat right there and I want to capture that meat if I can. Okay, that's my fillet. It's very tempting to just remove this fillet. That would be a big mistake. I'm going to remove it after I do the other side. Why? Because this fillet props the fish up, so even a short guy like me can have the right angle for the next sets of cuts. Okay. So again, these rags are just anti-slip devices. Okay, so I've reached the backbone in almost all cases. There's a scale. Okay, so almost everywhere I've reached the backbone. Now I'm gonna have to start my curve upwards towards the sky with my knife. Yep, okay, so now I've got not too ugly a fillet. I've got my cheeks removed, I've got my fillet sitting down on the side of this. Here you can see the gut cavity goes all the way down to there. It's huge. Now I can, now that I've done both sides, now I just cut through. This is where good sharp knives really help. You waste less meat. Now again, we'll trim that off later. Low wound. Okay, this fish is done. Into my gut bucket. Okay, so now the next step is to skin it. Step 4 is to skin this. This is about a 8, 9, 10 pound fish. So you're gonna get pretty good yield. Most fish, I do not use a pinioning knife. This one is typically very slimy, so I have to hold the thing down. Notice I've removed my rags. Why? Because I want a flat surface. I want wood underneath me because it doesn't let the fish slide around as much. Notice also I'm using a long, flexible blade. This is a beautiful blade. Okay, so I hold it down. I do this kind of cut. I want to get down to skin, so the only meat I'm wasting is right there. I want to get down the skin, and I'm really going parallel to the table or close to it. And this is where a long knife really helps. If I used this knife, I wouldn't be there. I would still be inside the meat. So that's where a short fillet knife isn't quite as good as this good long one for a bigger fish. Now, I like to keep the fillet on top of the skin because it minimizes how many scales that I have to wash off later. So the skin is acting like a plate to keep the fillet from being on this cutting board. Now I take my typical fillet knife, not the skinning knife, and I'm coming in to make my V cut. This is where I'm removing a lot of the bones. Okay, so this is mostly the bones where I cut through right about there on the fish. This is, I'm just going to get rid of. If you have the time and you don't have much fish, use a pair of needle nose pliers and pull those bones out. That way you're not wasting any of the meat around them. I don't really have the time for that. I feel this to make sure I haven't missed any bones. I'm beautiful. So what I captured by continuing my original fillet here was that chunk of meat. So it's a beautiful fillet. Well, could be a little bit better. It's a 90 on a scale of 100. I'm going to put that there. Do the same thing here. This other fillet. Notice that's my cheek meat. Right there. Okay, this step number 6 is washing your fillets. So since we were working outside, we put a towel over these to keep flies away. Typically you'd be indoors or in a place where flies aren't going to become an issue. I use 5-gallon buckets for a fish. Typically, I don't like running water on a sink. I think it beats up the flesh, so I'll fill this partially up with water. Once a bucket is used for fish, it is never used for vegetables or anything else. So I label my buckets fish, so I'm good to go. I'm just going to ease my fillets in here. There's already got water in here, so running water is not going to disturb them. Or along that rib cage for any bits of bone I may have missed. Looking for any scales, any bits of grass or whatever. Oh, okay, my first bit of bone. Okay, I just felt it. Your fingers are your best friend, that's why I took off my gloves. And with this little knife, I'm just getting rid of that bone. Any bits of scale. This is a shortened fillet because the arrow went in right at the nape. Another where the arrow went in right at the nape. This beautiful fish. Done washing. So I'll let that drain, and then in about 45 minutes after it's fully drained under refrigeration, then I can package it for freezing or, vacuum seal it for freezing. Done.
Thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps anybody who gets a snakehead know how to fillet it. And thank you, Brett from Even Star Organic Farm, for showing us how he does it, which is the best way that we found for the most yield per fish.
Thank you, Nick, for killing snakehead. They are invasive, and you folks keep cutting, keep eating, keep enjoying fish, because it is delicious. Take care.